What's a must-know story of Reddit you should know? Story 1. When a Redditor asked for help because the language on their screen changed to Spanish. And everyone replied to it in Spanish. Then OP's update was hilarious. Update, so I wake up this morning to about 1,500 replies in my inbox that I cannot read. And then I run them through Google Translator and most of them say stuff like, the dog is in my pants, and, where is the library? Thanks, Reddit. Even the admin jumped in to help, but of course in Spanish. Story 2. The lady that owned a wedding cake store and secretly only used boxed cake mix from the grocery in all her cakes. IRC, she said she hated making cakes, but loved decorating them and everyone seemed to like the cakes anyway. She still updates the post last I checked. Story 3. The guy who tried heroin, I think, and documented his journey from non-addict to addict to recovery. There's also the post-it note guy who kept finding post-its in his apartment. User avatar. Level 2. Corn macabre. 10 MO ago. Helpful. The post-it note one is legendary, such a wild story of dude finding cryptic post-it notes all around his apartment in this unraveling surreal mystery where he thought his landlord was fucking with him and breaking in his apartment and even emulating his handwriting. Many comments dismissed the dude as mental delirious. Top comment goes wildcard and suggests he checked the batteries in his carbon monoxide alarm. Guy goes huh yeah, it's not plugged in. Responds a few days later confirming he was being poisoned by a carbon monoxide leak. Story 4. I posted this when my ex-husband and I were still just dating and he was living with his grandma. He had a problem with sleepwalking, or maybe it's better described as not being fully conscious when he first wakes up, so he doesn't remember what he does. He also had severe anxiety and was worried that he was eating things he shouldn't during this and maybe accidentally poisoning himself. He set up the webcam in his room to be motion activated. Well, the first thing his sleepwalking self did was turn off the webcam, which just made the anxiety worse because he was like, what am I doing that I don't want me TOC? Story 5. I'm disappointed that no one mentioned the really big sub sandwich story. It was an AITA post about a guy who brought a very large sub to a party, wedding, or some shit, ate the whole thing, everyone went TF off on him. It was one of my favorites, but I just searched for it and couldn't find it. Hahaha, I remember when this was posted. I was on an RV trip with my husband and my grandparents and I read the post out loud to everyone and it's one of my fondest memories. We were absolutely cackling and my grandpa wouldn't stop referencing it for months after that. Well, that's not fucking sharing, is it, Alan? Edit. Another AITA post that my grandparents loved was the one where the girl gives an invitation to her wedding as a white elephant gift and is Pikachu surprised that no one wanted it. Story 6. The story of Champ the Goat. Originally told by you/Stoic Smile about a goat who his company would rent out to eat shrubs and do landscaping. I used to work on a forestry and conservation crew. We tried to offer this service with the goat that for some reason hung out in the field next to our shop, which I guess we owned, maybe? Anyway, the goat's name was Champ, and I wouldn't be surprised if we accidentally stole Champ at one point, because Champ hated to be alone, and if you left him alone, he would find a way through or over any enclosure you left him in and wander around until he found a companion. To Champ, a companion could be a person, a dog, a chicken, a bicycle, a basketball, anything that his little goat mind imagined was a living creature. He especially liked things that seemed to have some kind of life or that made noise. Like generators and sump pumps. So when we rented Champ out to people, we warned them that he needed some kind of company, or he would escape. We often recommended something like a blow-up pool toy or even just an open umbrella. Just something nearby that Champ could imagine was his friend. Inevitably people would underestimate Champ's squirreliness, and assume that their fence/tether/stone wall was sufficient to keep him where they wanted to be, and they would leave him alone. Then we'd have to go find Champ. One time I found him in a scrapyard munching on weeds between rows of crushed cars. One time I found him curled up in the shade in a neighbor's yard with a golden retriever. But I think the best was when he made his way onto an elementary school playground. We of course had a tag on his collar with a phone number to call if he was found since he went missing so much. And one day, we got a call from a school principal informing us that he had our goat. For those of you who don't know much about goats, they delight in climbing on things. So for Champ, there was no place more attractive than the very top of the metal play structure at this playground. The kids were absolutely smitten with him, and he was absolutely thrilled to have so many friends. And he was ecstatic to be at the top of the play structure too. It wasn't until all the kids went inside after recess that we could get him down. I think it was the best day of his life. Story 7. There was this girl from the Solomon Islands. Used to live in a tiny village or settlement, on a small island there. Used to get around on canoes, and live in primitive little self-made huts. She'd sometimes go to Brisbane, where I think she had studied or visited a while. She just showed all of us what island life was like, removed from modern conveniences of restaurants, supermarkets, cars and stress. I loved seeing her photos and reading about her life there. Does anyone else remember this girl from the Solomon Islands? Story 8. The guy who wanted to leave his wife who posted to r/relationship advice, but was worried about how she'd react. Reddit told him to stop being a pussy, so he told her it was over, then she killed both their kids. User avatar. Level 2. Rice Alicorn. 10 MO ago. For those who want greater detail. Jason Worley found out that his wife had cheated on him with their neighbor. They had been married for years and had 2 children, so initially Jason planned to stay married for the sake of their kids. However, he eventually had his doubts on this position, and he sought advice on r/relationship_advice as the now deleted user u/JasonInHealth. He asked if he should divorce his wife. For once in a blue moon, the subreddit's typical advice of, dump that bitch, was actually warranted, and many users expressed that he should proceed with a divorce for his sake and his children's. Jason took this advice to heart, and shortly after the post was made, he requested a divorce from his wife. Days after this divorce request, Jason's ex-to-be Brandy Worley did the unthinkable. She procured a combat knife from Walmart, which she would end up using to murder their 2 children. On the night of the murders, Brandy asked Jason to not sleep in their bedroom and instead sleep on a couch. Jason declined the couch and instead opted to sleep in the house's basement. Once Jason was asleep, Brandy took the knife and murdered their 2 children. Once they were dead, she attempted to kill herself, but was unsuccessful and remains alive to this day. Upon questioning, she revealed that her motive for killing the children was so that Jason couldn't take them away from her. During her trial she was sentenced to serve 120 years in prison, 65 for the murder of her 3-year-old daughter and 55 for the murder of her 7-year-old son. Story 9. The guy who dreamed an entire life and a lamp ruined it all. I still think about this story from time to time. This is actually a very real fear of mine. I'm a recovering addict with a life I love, almost 10 years sober. Husband I adore, even after 8 years of marriage. Great kids, I run a successful animal rescue. I just really love my life and I am actually very afraid I am gonna wake up hungover in a holding cell and it's all been fake. No weird lamp so far though. Edit. Y'all, my fear predates me reading this story, so the story is fake isn't alleviating anything, but thank you for trying. Story 10. It's not that old, but the story of how Ellen Pao was head of Reddit and lost her job in 2015. That was the time period when Reddit went from mostly free-range community to business-curated social media outlet. A lot of people see that 2014 into 2016 timeframe as the death of old Reddit. Reddit used to be nuts. You'd see stuff here that you couldn't find anywhere else. It was a mashup of cute cat videos, industrial accidents, weird sex stuff, celebrity Q&A, wholesome stories, and frankly dangerous shit from the bowels of the internet. Like you could see a guy cutting his own nipples off and a dog riding a scooter right next to each other. Every single day, and on the front page too, it was always something crazy. But that's not exactly marketable. Imagine pulling up the front page at an investors meeting and the first link is some guy putting a metal rod up his dick hole. Story 11. My favorite was the guy throwing his steak at the window and getting caught by his wife's boss, and then the wife followed up with a post of her own. Another one I've never been able to find was a guy who was drunk/high and he yelled out of his window, "Happy fucking birthday." Really aggressively and scared her. The comment underneath said, "Bake her a cake to say sorry." The comment underneath said, "Right on it, I'm really fucking sorry." I was crying laughing at that one and I've never been able to find it since. The steak one still has me in tears. Story 12. The Ask a Rapist thread. It was a horrible stain on the history of this website, but an important reminder that not everyone online is a good person and the Reddit hive mind can be dangerous. I was 12 when it was first posted, and reading that thread changed the way I saw people around me. Users got thousands of upvotes for confessing to sexual assault, and many of the replies were along the lines of, "Well, that wasn't so bad, I don't blame you TBH," or "Is this turning anyone else on?" That thread actually ended up in a research paper by researchers at Georgia State University for the journal Psychology of Violence. They saw it as an opportunity to analyze the commonalities in the mindsets of sexual assaulters because of the frank discussion that anonymity allows for socially condemnable topics. That thread was gross. I remember reporting it as soon as it went up, and it stayed up until that psychiatrist made a "this is disgusting and harmful, you are validating abusers and getting them off" post that got traction in the media. Then they finally started to take the post down / clean it up. But while it was up and generating interactions, despite multiple complaints / report by us little people, the mod / admins did not care. I remember being so goddamn skeeved out. There were some legitimate monsters in that thread that hand-waved their behavior with, but I'm a good boy now because I have a wife and kid. Even though I still think of what I did a lot. AKA a high chance to do it again. And yet people were like, "Oh well, that's bad, but it's clear you've changed, no need to dwell on the past." That was my first time realizing what the general audience of Reddit is like. Even if some of the stories in that thread were fake, the encouraging / forgiving replies to them were not. And because of it, I very rarely take anybody on this site seriously outside of smaller hobby-related subreddits. I don't value the opinions of someone who would encourage another person who committed assault the same way I don't value the opinion of an obvious 14-year-old in a subreddit like AITA giving life advice. Story 13. Banana for Scale started here. The post was some kid who found a secret room in his bedroom and didn't have anything to measure the size of the secret door except a banana. I don't even remember how long ago that was. I don't know if I could ever find that post. Story 14. The Narwhal Bacons at Midnight. Edit. It was coined by a commenter in a thread by the user /u/Sadra, a well-known Redditor that was later the target of a pretty serious, unrelated, witch hunt. It was the first site-wide Reddit drama I experienced back in the day. For those interested in a lot of things mentioned in these threads, our /Museum of Reddit has quite the catalog. Good lord, I haven't heard this in years. Story 15. The guy whose very special brother loves this one specific Tonka truck from the 90s. It was a fire and rescue truck, and his family finds them on eBay and buys him one every Christmas, and it's the only thing B loves, and OP couldn't find one anywhere and came to Reddit to ask if anyone had one in an attic or old toy box. Everyone was so helpful, and the post was just a beautiful internet moment. I remember one user in France found one on French eBay and offered to buy it and send it over. Another user has one that wasn't quite right model. The right one had a silver tow hook on the back, and that was very important to the brother, so some other guy who had a metal casting machine offered to make the hooks. And eventually Tonka heard about the post, and a rep came in and said the company would search their warehouses for any back stock of the item, and it was so sweet. And then of course some people were like, what if Tonka made up this whole post just to get good publicity? And I was like, shut up you fucking cynics. Story 16. The one that always stuck with me is the guy who peed on a pregnancy test as a joke, and it came out positive, so he posted the picture to r/funny or something similar. Amongst all the tomfoolery in the comments, a med student pipes up saying that OP should go see their doctor immediately. Turns out that the hormone that pregnancy tests detect, when produced by males, is a symptom of testicular cancer. IRC. The guy ended up catching it super early because of the thread and getting it removed before it became a problem. Story 17. The guy who posted on a sub for Benadryl addicts the increasing amounts he was taking until he posted a lethal dose and never anything again. That subreddit is such a rabbit hole. I spent a whole week on there reading anything I could find because it was so fascinating. They all know it's terrible, they all encourage new people to not try it at all or to stop. They don't even have fun during the trips, they just get sick and terrified, but they still do it constantly. Story 18. One time someone on Reddit asked, "What's something that's been bothering you for ages," or something along those lines. A Redditor replied that a long time ago, early 80s, one of her roommates vanished and that's been bugging her ever since. The Redditor said one day it was time to eat dinner, but her roommate was nowhere to be found in the house. The Redditor couldn't believe her roommate would leave without mentioning a single word. Not to mention all her stuff was still there. Long story short, someone replied with an article that basically said the Redditor's roommate committed suicide in the woods back then. The Redditor was stunned when she read the article. Story 19. The story of Aaron Swartz, co-founder of Reddit, contributor to the RSS web feed format, social activist, and suicide victim after the US government charged him with felonies relating to his surreptitious access and systematic downloading of academic journal articles from JSTOR. Aaron wanted everyone to have free and easy access to important academic information. He also ran a similar campaign on the Pacer system, which is a horribly old and outdated system that charges on a per-page basis to access public documents. The FBI investigated Swartz for this but couldn't or wouldn't press charges because he had downloaded public documents. Aaron understood that locking these documents behind a paywall rendered them effectively private and sought to make them available to anyone that needed to view them, as it should have been. From my perspective, while Aaron was not with Reddit for the first 6 months of its life, it was Aaron who gave Reddit its soul. The site changed after he died. Story 20. The Dig Invasion. Long ago, Reddit was primarily a site about programming, geek stuff, liberal politics, and atheism. Rarely, if ever, did you see things about celebrities, and there was a lot less cat pictures, although those have always been a mainstay. The main competitor, Dig, ate itself, and all of the people from Dig came to Reddit. There was a massive shift in the user base to much younger and much more interested in pop culture and memes. Shortly after that, Reddit changed what the default subs were and, amongst other things, took the cringy r/atheism off as a default sub and made the site more mainstream. What we know as Reddit today is the result of a huge number of folks coming in from Dig and the efforts of the admins to be like, y'all chill, we got company and y'all are being embarrassing. Story 21. There was a man seeking advice on r/askdocs about getting proper hospice care as he was dying and managing his pain at home was too much. He was an ex-addict and his opioid tolerance was high. He had no family as he had burned those bridges with being an addict. The whole AskDoc community gave sound advice and some even contacted him privately to connect him with these resources. A couple days later, he posted an update post that he was actually in hospital because his condition significantly declined, but he wanted to thank the subreddit for all their help. He would be dying within the next 24 to 48 hours. The comments section of that post was absolutely heartbreaking to read. It was all these people who never met this man saying absolutely heartwarming quotes, words of sympathy, etc. I never cried so hard reading a damn Reddit post. A nurse or social worker ended up posting a final update on his account letting the community know he had passed without pain and to thank the subreddit again for all the sweet words. I wish I could link the post. Story 22. There was an Reddit that was something about trying porn positions IRL and how it turned out. A guy made a post about getting oral from his wife in a very odd and poorly described position, and someone asked him to draw a picture so they could understand it. He then submitted 2 MS Paint drawings of stick figures doing what he described while including little details like the weather outside. That was the first time I ever got in trouble for waking my wife up because I was laughing so hard I couldn't be quiet. This will probably be buried, but I really hope someone can share the link with the world.